Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I guess maybe evening on other parts of the world. Thank you for being here and for joining us today. I know everybody's busy and has, especially on the weekend, it's really, really nice to have, you all here. And I look forward to sharing a lot of info with everybody today, as well as our wonderful Bhantes here. So thank you again. And yeah, as Bhante Sanathavihari mentioned, it'll be recorded. So, if there's anything you may want to look back at later on, it'll all be there. And so yeah, just to give you a little intro on what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the elephant in the room. So what is the elephant in the room? That's our discussion about mental health in our community. So basically today's presentation is mostly on sharing information about mental health with everyone here. And also we want to get some, input from the community as well. So really just like seeing this as like a collaborative team effort, and being able to like break down some of the barriers that have been holding us back from talking about this topic. So today we have Bhante Kusala and we have Bhante Sanathavihari joining today as we did this collaboration to talk about this topic today. We're really excited to continue having more of these types of presentations, and also I'll talk to everybody about this at the end about an upcoming event we have planned as well. So yeah, basically just a little background. Each of us speakers today, we have walked different paths of our lives, different types of experience that we come with today. So that's going to be the interesting part of all of this, really us coming from different backgrounds and perspectives, all different. But the common goal here is really just to bring our community together, as I said before, and creating more understanding and healing. And through us breaking down those barriers, we'll get there. So I just wanted to start off on a little quote that healing can occur when we start to shed the light on the shadows that we have. So that's the spirit for today's presentation as well. So without any further delay, let's get started. I'm going to bring in a lot of energy. That's my personality. So just letting you guys know, if some people are still waking up, here I am. So just wanted to say thank you again, and we're going to get started with Bhante Sanathavihari. He's going to start his part of the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that lovely introduction.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Stephanie, can you give me a thumbs up if the presentation's up there? Yeah, we're good with the
Yep,
slides?
it's all good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we have good karma today. The Davis are protecting us. Yeah. So yeah, as Stephanie was saying, we're here to discuss mental health, especially within the Sri Lankan diaspora community in the United States and Canada. And yeah, a little bit about myself, right? Like, how did I come in contact with this community? What am I doing here? How did I get here, right? All these existential questions. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in LA, grew up in the Koreatown, Hollywood, North Hollywood districts, which included Little Armenia and also Thai Town. I had many Asian friends growing up. Actually, my high school sweetheart was a Vietnamese girl. And actually, the first school I went to was an all-Korean school. I didn't know that at the time, but later when I was like 10 years old, I looked back at the pictures and I was like, someone here doesn't look the same. Someone's different. And I asked my parents, why did you put me in that school? And they're like, it was the closest one. And that's how I ended up there at that all-Korean school. So, a lot of very, how can I say, like particular situations when you grow up like in inner cities like LA, or you grow up in big cities like New York, right? Like it's so dynamic and you come across all these cultures. And when you're growing up as a little child, it just seems like normal, right? But as you get older, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is kind of different. Like not everyone grew up like this, but it's a blessing to have been able to experience that growing up. Yeah. And then after high school, I joined the United States Air Force Reserve at 20 years old. And I was in the Air Force for about 9 years. And as a air transportation craftsman, basically the person who works on loading, unloading planes and passengers and all the cargo stuff. Just think about like a Delta Airlines meets like FedEx or UPS, right? Like put them together. And that's what I did for the military. Where I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, 3 deployments. And it was during this time that I came across the Dhamma. Well, I read a lot of Dhamma books since high school. And I was trying to practice, Buddhism to the extent that I could at that time. But it wasn't until I was in the military that I really got into it. And just because like I felt like it was the right time, I was mature enough and I was moving beyond being just a book Buddhist, because, that was how I was. I was just a book Buddhist, like, oh, that sounds nice. I guess nowadays, if I would have grown up later, I would have been like a meme Buddhist, right? Like, oh, that's a nice meme. Like, I want to do that. That looks pretty, but I wasn't really motivated to do it yet. But then around 2011, I started listening to like Ajahn Brahm talks on YouTube. And it was thanks to Ajahn Brahm that I really felt motivated to practice the Dhamma. And then I started listening to Bhante Yuttadhammo's Dhammapada series. And that I love that Dhammapada series. I was listening to it when I was in Afghanistan, actually. Every day I listened to watch one of the episodes of Bhante Yuttadhammo on the Dhammapada. And that really helped me get through my time over there in my last deployment, because I was over it. That's why I got out. Anyways, yeah. And then luckily enough, there turned out to be a Sri Lankan temple down the street, but I never knew it. I lived there for over 10 years and I didn't know there was a Sinhalese temple there, because they look like houses, right? Like most Sri Lankan temples just look like a house. You're never going to know until I went out to Yelp and I was looking for a Buddhist temple. And it turns out that there was one down the street. So I just walked down there and I was so blessed to, be greeted by such friendly Sri Lankan monks. And Sri Lankan monks, almost virtually all of them can speak English. So that makes it a lot easier too, right? There's like a huge barrier, because I remember going to a Thai temple once and like no one knew English. And there was one monk who knew a little bit and he just said hello and gave me a book. And that's all that happened. So I was so lucky to go to Sarath Chandra Buddhist Center and meet Bhante Kolita, Bhante Siriniwaza, Bhante Puniji, and get introduced to the Dhamma. And also at the same time get introduced to Sri Lankan culture, because I was so enthusiastic about Buddhism that I would show up even to the only all Sinhala events. Like it was only the whole Dhamma talk, the whole event was in Sinhala. No one was speaking English. So I would still show up because I just loved the vibe. There was something about like everyone was so friendly, and they were always feeding you. And although the food's a little too spicy, even for me as a Mexican, but I still enjoy the spicy Sri Lankan food. And then, after like 2 or 3 years, I decided to become a monk. And in 2015, I became a monk. And there's really where my introduction to the Sri Lankan community came, living in the temple with Sri Lankan monks and working with and tending to the Sri Lankan community. It was a very informative experience and very life-changing experience also. And also painful, like a lot of people come to the temples and they share their pain and their miseries and all the difficulties that they're going through, but also they share all the like birthday parties and weddings, and all the kids are so amazing, going to all these amazing colleges. Everyone's got like a 4.0 or higher or something like that. It's ridiculous, everyone's so amazing. I was like, wow, this is such an amazing community, and everyone took me in. I've never felt like an outsider, and I felt so blessed to be part of this community and being received so warm-heartedly. But anyways, as during my time as a monk, I was luckily enough to finish my degree and my BA in religion, and also get my master's in counseling psychology as a marriage family therapist. I kind of didn't want to go to school anymore, but I know in Sri Lankan monasticism, going to school is very important. All the monks are always telling me, you should get a PhD, and you should go to school. And I'm so happy that the Sri Lankan community has such an emphasis on studying, because that really motivated me to finish my studies and just not leave it halfway. Anyways, yeah, so up until now, it's been a little over 8 years that I've been at a Sri Lankan temple, and, working mostly with kids, because I'm the one me and Bhante Siriniwaza run the Dhamma School program. So that's what I've mostly been working with kids, and kids, they're very honest. Like they say everything that happens at home. So I got to learn a lot of things about what's really going on. They're unfiltered at that age, the little 5-6-year-old kids. So that was also very beautiful. But a lot of teenagers and young adults, when they come back from college in the summer, they share a lot of their experiences too, right? And they've told me many times, like, I don't feel comfortable sharing this with my parents, or I don't feel comfortable sharing this with the older monks because they look mean, they're scared of the older monks. I don't know why. The older monks are very friendly and nice, but they just, for some reason, they think that. And yeah, but I've been spending also a lot of my time working with the Latino community, because Sri Lankan monks are so much about sharing the Dhamma throughout the entire world. So that rubbed off on me. So I also want to share the Dhamma throughout the entire world. So I've been doing that in Spanish. And currently I'm in a Buddhist chaplaincy program because I kind of want to pivot towards that, serving Buddhists, right? And serving them in the capacity of a Buddhist monk. And that's really what I want to do. So I think you got a good feel about where I'm coming from and where I'm at right now. And so let's talk about what is mental health, right? What is mental health? Mental health just includes everything, actually. Mental health is everything. It's emotional, it's cognitive, it's behavioral. Mental health is not only about being sick, but it's also about like feeling great and being happy. And mental health is about relationships, and mental health is about enjoying your life, and mental health is about the struggles, right? And the hard work. It's basically everything, right? We experience everything. The whole entirety of our lives is mental health. And there's no difference between mental health and physical health. Hopefully in some future talks, we'll get to talk about the relationship between these two and see like, wow, there really isn't that much of a difference between, it's just like different ways of approaching the same topic or the same issue. As I was saying, mental health affects the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act, the choices we make, and the way we relate to others. Also, mental health is more than just the absence of mental illness, right? It's essential to your overall health and quality of life. So mental health is just like well-being, overall well-being, focusing specifically like on the psychological part, right? The subjective part. That's what we can say. But it's just as important as our physical health. Okay, so what is a mental illness? This is the thing that no one wants to talk about or admit, or it doesn't happen, etc. Whatever, so many taboos, so much stigma. This is the elephant in the room that we're here to address. Mental illness are health conditions involving changes in emotions, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these, right? Mental illness can be associated with distress or problems functioning in social work or family activities. Yeah, so mental illness, just think about it, something that's making it difficult, or something that's an obstacle or a hindrance or causing problems in your normal, that would impede you to live your life normally. That's all it is, right? It's not like it's not Mara, it's not our bad karma or anything like that, right? It's something that arises due to the difficulties and changes in life, right? And that impedes you from living a normal life. Basically, that's what we can talk about what mental illness is. And mental illness does not discriminate, right? It doesn't happen only to certain, it's only an American thing, right? Only people in the West, they get mental illnesses, right? And, back in Sri Lanka, we didn't have mental illnesses, right? Or back in the time of the Buddha, there was no mental illnesses. Only today, nowadays, mental illness is something that just arose in the last 100 years in the West. It's something that's made up, right? No, mental illness doesn't discriminate on age, gender, geography, income, social status, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, identity, background. No one escapes this. There's a beautiful passage from the commentaries, and it says that sabe putu jana umataka, right? All beings are crazy, according to the Buddha, right? So being crazy or having a mental illness or a mental disorder is nothing new. I mean, as Buddhists, we've known this for a long time, right? So why can't we talk about it? It's something very normal in the Buddhist tradition. Okay, what causes mental illness? There is no single cause for mental illness. A number of factors can contribute to risk for mental illness, right? So many things like adverse childhood experiences such as trauma or history of abuse, or just like growing up in a rough neighborhood, right? Or just like not getting enough attention. Or you feel like you've not been seen, right? Maybe you are getting enough attention, but you feel like you're not being seen. There's so many things. Your diet, right? Your diet can affect it. The environment, we know about, we could talk about this later, seasonal affective disorder, when you don't get enough sunlight. So there's so many things, right? Virtually like an infinite number of causes and conditions that can contribute to mental illness. Experiences related to ongoing chronic medical conditions, right? So you can see how, like, if you were sick, physically sick for a long time, how that can cause distress, and that distress can lead to like depression or anxiety, and that going on for a long time can transform itself into this kind of mental illness, meaning that you're no longer able to function the way you would normally function, right? Biological factors, as I said, the use of drugs and alcohol. We can also include food, all kinds of diet and nutrition, and just basically like feeling isolated or lonely or not being seen, or like there's no meaning to life, right? Like those kind of things, to that more existential, philosophical, spiritual dimensions, can also be contributing factors, causes, and conditions to mental illness. What is a mental disorder, right? So according to the DSM-5, that's the book that most mental health professionals use nowadays to classify mental disorders, and also to be able to get reimbursement, right, for treatment. According to the DSM-5, the definition of a mental disorder is a syndrome characterized by clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotion, regulation, or behavior that reflects a dysfunction in the psychological, biological, or development processes underlying mental function. Is basically what I said earlier, right? But this is kind of like the fancy academic way to say, the clinical way of saying what I said earlier in the beginning about what is mental illness, right? So this is a mental disorder. Some examples of some mental disorders, and these are probably some of the more known ones, and that's what I wanted to share it with you, is major depressive disorder, right? And this is to be distinguished from feeling depressed, right? Feeling depressed is a normal human emotion. Major depressive disorder, you have to fill certain categories, right? Certain requirements to have a disorder. So I just want to also emphasize that we need to be able to distinguish between kind of normal emotional experiences, even though they're very uncomfortable, and even though they may last 1 day or 2, 3 days, from something like clinical depression, which is what we're talking about here, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, etc. Right? So there's so many, and there's always new disorders being unveiled to us, right? Because the variety of human experience is so vast, right? So we can't imagine the various amounts of different kind of difficulties and chronic difficulties that people are experiencing. And that's why you'll kind of see these development or splitting of mental disorders. Is not that these things are just being made out of the blue, right? Like, oh, it'll be very convenient for us to make up more mental disorders, but it's just a reflection of us paying more attention, right? And becoming more aware of people's experiences and people's difficulties. What is not a mental disorder? So as I was trying to say earlier, feeling anxious, right? Fearful, angry, down, stressed, grief from losing a loved one. These are all normal human experiences, right? We all feel bad. If you lose someone that you really love, or you go through a breakup, or you don't get that job, or you get in a car accident, like, you're going to feel crappy. You can feel crappy, and that's just normal. Like, feeling crappy is part of being human, right? Like, that's just part of it. So we have to be very careful, because nowadays, especially because of social media and other online things, there tends to be this kind of tendency to self-pathologize, right? You want to self-pathologize. And I think it comes from a place of wanting to be seen and wanting to be relieved from suffering. Like, if I know what it is, then I can do something about it. But, just because we're going through something difficult doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with us, right? Or that we're sick. To determine this, if you feel like you've been anxious for a long time, or you feel like you're distressed for a long period of time, then that would be the time to go seek a mental health professional to be able to see if you do qualify, right? For a clinical mental disorder, and not just experiencing normal human distress that we all feel, because the world is very difficult and life is very difficult. All right. How common are mental illness? It just doesn't happen to a few people. It doesn't happen to other people. It's super common, actually. More than 1 in 5 U.S. adults live with mental illness. About 1 in 25 U.S. adults live with a serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or major depression. Over 1 in 5 youths, right? So kids between 13 and 18, either currently or some point during their life have had a serious debilitating mental illness, right? 1 in 5 teenagers. Around 20% of the world's children and adolescents have a mental health condition, with suicide being the second leading cause of deaths among young adults or the youth between 19 and 29 years old. About 46,000 people die by suicide every year in the US. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people in the ages of 14 to 34 years old. So we can see that mental illness is very common. Prevalence of mental health issues in the Asian American population. So I just want to share some very interesting insights about these statistics before we get into it. So when I was looking into statistics specifically for like Sri Lankan Americans, Sri Lankan Canadians, I ran into nothing. Actually, the absence of information was something that made this kind of like research very difficult. So when in order to find Sri Lankan American, Sri Lankan Canadian, Sri Lankan Australian, whatever information, I had to look within the broader category of Asian, whatever here, Asian American, right? And within the group of Asian American, sometimes we'd find like South Asian Americans too, right? And then sometimes I'd have to look where it says other, right? So we can find these to find statistics about Sri Lankan Americans, Sri Lankan Canadians. We have to look within Asian American statistics. We have to look within South Asian American statistics, or look within other statistics, right? So it was very difficult to find statistics just pertaining specifically to Sri Lankan Americans or Canadians. So I'm going to be using these wider categories of Asian American or Asian or South Asian American, just because there is virtually no data, right? It's difficult to find data. So this is the best that I could do to find the data on this population. So 1/3 of Asian and Asian American or Asian American adults here, the distinguishing factor between Asian and Asian Americans. An Asian would be like a person who is studying in the United States or Canada, right? And not necessarily as a citizen or a resident or identifies as an American, but they're here in the US or Canada or some other Western country, and they identify as Asian. And an Asian American is a person who identifies as an Asian American, has been living and working in America as a citizen, etc. So there's like a subtle difference between these two categories. So 1/3, right, of Asian/Asian American adults reported psychological distress. Increased risk of distress among adults who were female, trans, non-binary, ages of 18 to 44 years old, US-born, Cambodian, multiracial, and non-Cam. So these are the communities, right? These are the groups who have higher levels of distress, right? Than what we would call like the vast majority or the normal Asian American population. Of those reporting psychological distress, 41.8 reported unmet mental health needs. Unmet mental health needs were the highest among Asian American adults who were ages 18 to 24 years old, right? So nearly half of Asian Americans, right, reported unmet mental health needs. Wow. US South Asians often experience greater stigma towards mental illness than other groups, right? So when comparing them to Latinos, comparing them to African Americans, comparing them to all these other groups in the United States, South Asians, right, often experience greater stigma towards mental illness than other groups. And that's why we're here today, right? We're here to address this issue. Prevalence of mental health issues in the Asian American population. Did I go backwards? No. 1 in 5 US South Asians reported experiences of mood and anxiety disorders in their life, right? So mood and anxiety disorders, we're talking about major depressive disorder. We're talking about social anxiety disorder and these kind of disorders, right? So 1 in 5 US South Asians reported to experience one of these either mood or anxiety disorders in their life. US South Asian men use alcohol more than women, right? South Asian women at greater risk for alcohol-related health problems and are less likely to receive alcohol disorder treatment. Alcohol use among South Asian men is also linked to increased family violence, disruption, financial problems, drinking and driving, and other legal problems. Suicide was the leading cause of death among South Asian Americans in the age group of 15 to 24 years. South Asian women attempted suicide twice as often as males. So we can see some really painful, very painful numbers here. Okay. So here's the other part of the elephant in the room, right? Because there's so much stigma about going to therapy and seeing a psychologist or seeing a mental health professional, right? So what is counseling? What is therapy, right? And counseling and therapy, subtle differences, but for the purposes of this talk, we're going to use them like they're synonymous, right? Psychotherapy is an approach for treating mental health issues by talking with a psychologist, psychiatrist, or another mental health provider like Stephanie, right? A clinical social worker. It's also known as talk therapy, counseling, psychosocial therapy, or simply therapy. During psychotherapy, you can learn about specific issues and how your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors affect your mood. Talk therapy helps you learn how to take control of your life and respond to challenging situations with healthy coping skills. There are many types of psychotherapy. The type that's right for you depends on your situation, right? So it's just basically helping people, right, become aware and manage their everyday experiences. That's all it is, right? It's not like we're doing witchcraft or, like some other wild stuff out there. I mean, it's just getting to know people and helping people and listening to people with their everyday problems. Reasons to seek out mental health. Therapy counseling isn't only for people who are struggling with mental health problems, right? An illness. You don't have to have a mental disorder. You don't have to have mental illness in order to see a counselor, to be able to see a therapist, a mental health professional. Therapy can be a great way to explore and understand the issues we navigate every day, including decisions to do with work, relationships, or life in general. Some examples of like why some people might want to see a therapist are just you want someone to talk to, right? Maybe you don't feel comfortable talking to your family or friends. That's a great reason. You don't need to be sick. There doesn't need to be anything wrong with you to talk to someone, right? There's a big change in your life. Maybe you're deciding to move from one career field to another, to move from one city to another, right? Maybe you've lost someone, and lost someone doesn't mean they died. Maybe you broke up with someone, a partner that you've been with for a long time, right? And you have to grieve that. So processing that grief with someone who's experienced and has a lot of knowledge about how to processing grief will be very beneficial. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. You're not, we don't need to pathologize that grief. Maybe you feel like you lack meaning in your life, right? You're feeling lost or you feel out of control. That's another good reason to see a therapist or a counselor. Maybe you're having family issues, right? There's some tension between you and your spouse or your sister, your brother, your auntie, your mom, your dad. That's a great reason also to seek out some therapy. Maybe you're living with a severe illness or disease, right? Or for substance use, addiction, etc. So it's not all about that you're crazy, right? Like people would say, you have to be crazy to go see a shrink. Like, no, you just might need someone to speak to or someone to hear you out, or maybe someone to share your problems with, or just get a different perspective, of what's going on. Yeah, so that pretty much wraps it up for me. And I'm going to be passing it on to Stephanie, who's going to come with twice as much energy as me.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you so much. And I guess I'll be piggybacking off of all of the great information you provided, the statistics especially, and we're gonna continue to dive deep as we continue this presentation. So thank you. All right. So my name is Stephanie. I am a real life therapist. And just to start off my part of the presentation, I just wanted to give you a sense of my background and what led me into this field, and just like how like some different parts of my life have led me here, like my upbringing, my experiences, my my education, and yeah. So just wanted to give you a little background of who I am and segue into the rest of the information. So just to start off with where I was born. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, in Hollywood specifically. And so early on in life, my goal was, I was so geared on just helping people, just like I just want to heal people. That was what I said as a kid. And touch people's lives, and that was like my general goal as a child, I would say. And growing up, you start to learn about different things, different fields, questioning, what are my options, right? And I remember going to school, and every, school, or just the doctor, whatever environment, and just kind of looking around, like, what type of person do I want to be when I grow up? And I really admired a lot of the doctors, actually. So growing up, I really was passionate about wanting to be like a pediatrician or a doctor, so, some capacity of the ability to heal. And yeah, so just kind of went on that path. I ended up wanting to seek a career in the medical field. Part of that was also that was just what everybody talked about in our community, the typical doctor, lawyer, stuff, businessman, businesswoman, right? Options. And I kind of hold myself into one of those boxes in a way. But also, was still thinking about the goal, which was being able to have the capacity to help people. So during my bachelor's degree, I actually majored in psychology. So I guess I was already going in that direction, but I did complete some classes that would be prerequisites, excuse me, for becoming a doctor or any type of medical professional. And throughout that journey, I learned a lot about myself. I did different internships, and through that was able to really see and understand the importance of why mental health and physical health are so important in terms of just overall health in general. And that really started to frustrate me a little bit, not in a negative way, but more so in a way of like something is missing here. And I started to question a lot of things. I started to even question, some of the pressures that I saw within my own college experience, and feeling like a lot of the students didn't have the resources or support, or just seeing, people within our community, or just like friends, family, that were struggling. And I felt this need to like, I was always that person that was giving people advice, and just that person people would come to for help. And so I was like, oh, I feel like I have something here. Let me move in that direction. So through lots of experiences, I then decided to go into getting a master's in social work at USC. So I did my BA in psychology at UCSD. And then after that experience and that, questioning and, understanding more about myself, I thought, okay, mental health it is. So I applied to USC, got in there for a grad program. And that led to where I'm at today, which is as a therapist. I'm an associate clinical social worker. So currently I'm working from home, and I'm working as a mental health clinician, and so working towards my license. So basically, if you think about it like a medical perspective, like it's like residency right now kind of feeling, getting my experience, really, helping people that, have, as Bante just talked about before, it can be things just like stuff that we're struggling with, and it doesn't have to just be stuff with, a specific mental illness, but even just like issues like relationships, self-esteem, stuff like that, And so I really love what I do in terms of the ability to, help and give back. And I found my path in this, and I'm really, really glad to be here. And on the side, I do some part-time life coaching as well. So my reason for going into that was because I wanted to break some of the barriers with being able to help people that I know closely, in terms of their issues that they're going through. And as a therapist, there are some, things we need to consider, like, I can't do therapy with, a family member of mine, someone that's too close to me. So because of that, respecting that boundary, I thought about life coaching. So just that's another reason why I was geared in this direction towards working with our community specifically. And yeah, so going into just other reasons why, the stigma around mental illness was the big part of why, I was really excited to join this specifically, what we're doing here today, and also wanting to be able to join, connect, and bridge the gap between mental illness, mental health in general, and just our community and our Buddhist community, and just being able to see that there's a lot of parallels, a lot of, similarities, and actually a lot of the interventions that we learn in school do have that mindfulness-based approach, and um, do align with a lot of Buddhist values and things that we learn. And so I just wanted to bridge that gap. It felt like there was some kind of a disconnect, and so that's why we're here, to see that that there is a way across, and there is a way to connect as well. So yeah, so basically just wanted to break these barriers and start to think outside the box, and like, how can we now, forgetting all those barriers, how can we start to see them as not walls, but more so as ways that we can, find a door and go to the other side. So that's my intro, and I guess we can go into the next slide. Oh yeah, and I just so this is a little quote I found I wanted to share with you all today. I thought it was really nice, so I thought I'd share just to start things off. The quote says, "I thought becoming myself was improving each part piece by piece, but it was finding a hidden wholeness, seeing the fractures as the design." So I really love this quote because it really brought me back to, like, even parts of my own life growing up, and feeling like, you know, maybe I had to change parts of me, or, focus on things that I need to work on. And it was maybe coming sometimes from a place of not accepting parts of myself, and I think that is maybe something that a lot of us can feel, um, with trying to balance things that we learn maybe in school or at work, and just that the difference in our environments, right, within our cultural community, and just feeling kind of like, do I need to change this and that, but instead of changing, through acceptance, there can be a lot of healing. And so that's the direction I've been going in now, and realizing, there, through the things that we go through the mistakes we make, whatever we do in life, there is that some wholeness, a hidden wholeness and meaning in the things that haven't worked out for us, or the things that we haven't felt good about and proud of. So just wanted to share that quote. And so, yeah, I just wanted to, I mentioned some of this stuff before, but wanted to go into a little bit more about my lived experience within the community. So a lot of this, like, my experience was, growing up, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate, was feeling that, mental illness was something that was, if someone had a mental illness, for example, it was like somebody was crazy, or, maybe couldn't handle life, and balance their life out, they're doing something wrong, these are a lot of the messages I would hear. And some of these things could be even blaming the individual. These are things I would overhear. Like, for example, someone suffering from alcoholism, someone might say, oh, they're just, they don't know how to control themselves, or, you know, yeah, just judging the person can be part of that too. Out of control stuff, kind of comments, right? And someone maybe with suicidal thoughts, or even having attempted suicide, people, might misjudge it as, oh, they're just seeking attention, or, want a reaction out of people, or, again, something to do with, like, lack of balance, or just, something is wrong with that person. And other behavioral issues as well can, have that same kind of blaming. So hearing that would really, really bother me. I think growing up, just kind of knowing that these were the views, and even when it came to me wanting to go into this field and asking myself which direction I wanted to go, that was part of my own internal struggle and the resistance that I was facing with wanting to go into this field. Because when I would talk about my desire to go into this field, a lot of my desires were met with a little bit of that, oh, maybe you might end up crazy if you do this kind of work, or you know, yeah, like it's you might not get enough money out of it too. I have heard that as well, but it's just different types of beliefs, right, around me pursuing this type of career. And I felt that that this was such an important thing, something so important to focus on. And I think that a lot of this is just that belief about, if we work with these people, we might end up crazy, or, the fact that whoever's going into therapy is also, crazy as well. Um, so, to continue, I just wanted to, mention also that, like, yeah, I mean, as Bante said earlier, like, a lot of these struggles are part of our life, and some of it is can be dismissed, or seen as we're complaining unnecessarily, or kind of just like whining about stuff, right? But a lot of these things that individuals might be expressing, could be some things that are very important to know and to pay attention to. They can be signs and indicators of some serious internal struggle, and that's why we're here too, to talk about, like, some of the why it's important to tap into, like, the warning signs, and really use that community support as a protective factor, which I'll go into in other slides. Yeah, I noticed this lack of understanding around mental health, and how, like, certain pressures, expectations can also contribute to mental illness. So, pressures to succeed in school, pressures to get a certain job, or to even just put a smile on one's face, right? When we actually don't want to smile, you know, some of the days, right? That can lead to us then feeling shame for ourselves, and feeling the sense of, oh, I need to project this positive, happy vibe all the time, and it's not reality, right? And so this kind of feeling can lead to a sense of isolation, feeling misunderstood, feeling that there is a lack of acceptance of ourselves and our feelings or emotions. And then a lot of this can be then swept under the rug, right? And I wanted to just briefly share something about different types of emotions, actually. That we have two types of emotions. We have natural emotions, and then we have manufactured emotions. So natural ones are the ones that Bante mentioned before, like if someone passes away, we feel sad. If something happens with the relationship, or a loss, right, we have to grieve, right? But in terms of manufactured emotions, those are emotions that basically are natural ones amplified, where we end up not really fully having processed those natural emotions. And then it leads to us really having some struggles later on, where we ask ourselves questions like, why did this happen to me? Why am I like this, right? And we keep that natural emotion, kind of like putting lighter fluid on the fire. It keeps that natural emotion going. So through acceptance, through this community support, that's how we can actually heal some of the old wounds we've had, and move through those natural emotions finally, and being able to process them. So that's it for that slide. Thank you. So just a little, I would just kind of briefly go over this. Some of the stuff that, the beliefs, some of the stuff I mentioned before. I think this list is could be more that could be added to this list, but this is what came to mind for me. Some of the taboo beliefs or stigma around mental health. So some of the things we might say are mental illness isn't real. We all have stress. We all have anxiety and depression. This is a Western thing. And that particular quote could also relate to us feeling like, well, because it is a Western thing to have mental illness, then why would we get therapy, right? Why would we seek support? Why would we talk about this? What, it's just, we'll get over it, kind of thing, right? Or maybe talk to somebody, talk to a friend, right? And, it might be dismissed. The other ones could be stay strong, don't overthink, or that's crazy. We don't have the money for that. It's a luxury, right? Meaning for mental health services. And, and that one's tricky, right? Because, sometimes that is a barrier, right? Finances. And I, know growing up, I was feeling bad about seeking therapy because I would look online and see the cost of mental health services. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I don't know if I can do that. It felt like a luxury. And I think in our community, that can be a big barrier. I want to seek therapy, I want to seek help, but how can I do it? Um, but yeah, at the end, there are some resources, but I just wanted to share now that there are ways that we can seek support. And again, it's really us coming back to the community again, right? It's if we have that protective factor of our community, we can also share within our community, or maybe get access to those resources that we talked about through you know, letting someone know within our community that we do need a little bit of help, right? And then another thing is, just talk to blank, it could be our spiritual leaders, right? And being able to, and kind of putting it in that direction, right? And it could be something more serious, right? So I guess we want to be mindful of that, you know, how we redirect our some of these needs and some of these things that we need to look out for in terms of warning signs. And maybe, and as I said before, dismissing. So, that dismissal of someone's mental illness and their attempt to share, um, especially if it's something that someone might be struggling with for a long time. This is actually probably one of the most important things and my biggest concerns as a therapist, actually, when I hear a lot of my patients talk about this. I, for example, I talk to my family about this and my friends, and or maybe a parent, and they didn't take it seriously, and no one can listen to me. I don't know who to talk to about this. And this can actually exacerbate someone's mental illness, actually make it worse, because then they feel further isolated, further, helpless, and it might lead to worse things. So yeah, that's it for that slide. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about some concepts as well. Just a little kind of different approach here. So there's a concept called acculturation. So this is a process that can occur when two or more cultures interact together. So in this, image shows it, just how the blending, right, the interaction of two cultures can occur, right? So it's basically this concept is a cultural exchange, essentially. So from like prolonged contact, living in the same, uh, area, or moving to a place where there's other cultures, and that prolonged contact creates an influence within ourselves. So acculturation status affects our career and personal psychotherapy processes, and acculturation status is associated with physical, mental health, school performance, and family or marital adjustment. So yeah, basically, with this concept, you know, uh, a lot of that influence can really, you know, it can really, it can be helpful and harmful, right? Sometimes uh, that interaction, of the two cultures and us adapting and, getting used to, a new environment can be a lot, right? And so, within this process, it can bring up a bit of struggle at time, right? A sense of questioning our identities, our sense of self, and really maybe even sometimes feeling a bit lost. So that's what I wanted to share about that. And then the other concept we wanted to share is called enculturation. So this is the process of becoming socialized into and maintaining cultural norms. So essentially, it's like, a process of us learning and internalizing, some of the cultural values and stuff that we learn from our family, our community. So enculturation is the very first familiarization process to a particular culture and begins right after birth. Enculturation teaches an individual of his or her position, roles, expectations, and behaviors of the particular culture in which he or she lives in. So examples of this, could be parents teaching children how to eat with their hands, and just some of the other cultural, you know, things that we do. How to bow to the monks and how to speak Sinhala. So, with this, as we learn about our culture, it's really, of course, it's really important, and in terms of, knowing where we came from and understanding more about ourselves. But what I also see is also sometimes this process can be a bit difficult at times too, right? When we learn about our own culture, we get that, um, what's the word, exposure to, some of our values, sometimes that can also, through that, within that, there can also be internal struggle as well. So, with both, there can be some of us struggle at some points, could happen, right? Not for everybody, but, with the interaction of all of these different elements, it can create some type of, questioning. So that's that for that one. Okay, and then so another concept today I want to share is colorism. So this is the prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. So for many South Asians, the lighter brown skin tone can be associated with the sense of attractiveness, right, goodness, power, status, competence. Whereas with darker skinned individuals, they can be perceived as maybe unattractive, maybe dirty, lazy, ignorant. And this is all stuff that's from these articles that we've found this information in. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate and even, yeah, have heard some of these types of uh, comments made, even maybe growing up. And it's something that we tend to see even in media, right? Like movies and just from growing up, and even when it comes to dating or marriage, or associating with certain types of friends, right? So I this is another topic that we feel is important, not just with skin tone, but also with ethnic um, you know um, backgrounds as well, which I'll talk about more in the next slide as well. But some of these barriers can create this sense of either a struggle with our own self-worth, or feeling like we're not good enough, or even on the opposite end, feeling like, there are certain expectations that I have based off of my background and the way I look, and so some of these things can be, unfortunately, things that can stand in our way of us feeling, good or bad about ourselves, or feeling inferior. And also within our own community, we can have some of that, within our own community as well, right? Feeling like, certain Sri Lankans or other South Asians might be maybe less than or not as attractive, right? Or worthy. And so that's something we want to really start to focus on and talk about, because that can be really harmful and hurtful to, individuals in our community. And the next one I want to talk about is racism. So racism, is a form of prejudice that assumes that members of racial categories have distinctive characteristics, and that these differences can result in some racial groups being inferior to others. So kind of like what I mentioned before in the last slide, but this racism is a system. It consists of these, structures, policies, practices, and norms. And like, as I said before, it assigns the value and determines opportunity based off of the way that people look or the color of their skin. So this then leaves us feeling like maybe somebody has an advantage over us, like whether it's maybe a job opportunity, or marriage, or being able to get to a certain do a certain career, or, what it can be a lot of things, right? And this feeling of I'm not good enough, or this person might have a better advantage over me. Um, and racism can both be interpersonal and structural. So it can negatively affect the mental and physical health of millions of people, preventing them from attaining their highest level of health, and consequently affecting the health of our nation. So two main barriers to Asian Americans seeking treatment. There's systemic barriers and there's cultural barriers. So it's the systemic barriers that would be, as like a result in the failure of the mental health system. So to adequately just address the needs of Asian Americans. So the barriers are listed below, and some of them can be like health issues, or lack of language interpreters, stuff like that, or just like, so within our system, that stops us from wanting to seek treatment. Cultural barriers can be, as I mentioned before, a stigma around mental health, our, not wanting to have that sense of shame on our family, ourselves, and the rest are listed in that paragraph, as well as other cultural barriers that prevent us. And I want to highlight this last thing, specifically, that within our community there can be that sense of not wanting to share some of this stuff. Like if somebody is struggling with mental illness, it can be this you know feeling of, oh, I don't want to share that with our community, or I don't want to have rumors be spread. So part of that is also keeping that silence about what we're struggling with, acting like everything's okay when it might not be, right? And there's that shame that is, attached to that mental illness, or just whatever we're struggling with, right? As I mentioned earlier, I'll just briefly go through some of these. But So, the downplaying, as I mentioned earlier, right? Bante also mentioned the self-diagnosis, as well as wanting to Google, to search, to talk to people and ask, um, you know, like, can you talk to me about this? And, what do you think I have? And that's, it's okay for us to talk to our community, our friends, right? But when it comes to certain, things that we're struggling with, at some point, sometimes we do need that professional support. Um, and also, as I mentioned before, the lack of social support can also be another, struggle that we might face. The lack of access to resources, not knowing where to go, not knowing how to start, feeling intimidated by that process, and also isolation. So not having that support system. So some ideas for support that we wanted to share are access to resources, therapy, activity groups in the future for like us to do some hiking or some type of activity. Life coaching is another one. Info or education sessions, and also other Zoom meetings like this. So these were some ideas that we had for what we could do as a community, that we would be working on together, as some ways that we can increase our social support and just support in general. So basically, protective factors are what I basically mentioned before. So the social support, other types of support, and these, having protective factors, in our lives, can help to decrease the risk of mental illness, on our lives and just our well-being, and just being able to have the ability to promote more mental health and well-being for ourselves. So these buffers act as protective factors for us to, just live a healthier life. So within our community, examples of that would be, you know, uh, our spiritual practices, our community, and those are things we already have, right? But I wanted to highlight today, that some of the protective factors that we do have can turn into the opposite, because if, sometimes we may not feel comfortable to reach out to the protective factors that we have, that are already in place, it might then lead us to feeling more isolated, feeling unsafe, unsure of how to access the support, feeling shame again, and feeling like, oh, there's no way out of this kind of feeling. So we want to basically, the goal of today's presentation is also to be able to use our protective factors that we already have also to create more of that, support for us, versus it being something that, individuals within our community might be avoiding or pushing away, because we just don't feel comfortable. So yeah, examples of the protective factors are, staying connected to the community, significant others, personal and environmental factors, physical and mental health, financial security, and spirituality and belief. So, this is an example. This is, excuse me, an example, a list of protective factors that we have in our lives, and may want to think about. But as I mentioned before, we want to, if we already have some of these protective factors, we want to maintain them as protective factors and not make them a reason for us to then, isolate and not feel safe. So that's that. Thank you. And so that's the end of my part. And next, I want to introduce Bante Kusala. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Bante Sanathavihari, for the opportunity to sit with you and talk about this very interesting subject matter. Yes, I was born and raised in Canada. Sorry, Sri Lanka. Why did I say Canada? It feels home to me there. So at the age of 16, as I was seeing a lot of suffering within my own family, I felt called to the monastic life. I saw happy and smiling monks in the temples, although later I understood that they were smiling, but there was suffering also in them. And some of them had to deal with some mental health issues while being monks and living with academic and social pressures of living as a monk. So I can be honest about that. From that age up until now, how I have seen different experience. I have lived through different experiences, and how I witnessed the healing within my own family, and actually healing also within my own body and mind, and that is so important to me. And I studied in University of Peradeniya. I majored in Pali language. And I moved to Italy and studied cognitive science, mainly because I wanted to study how emotions work. Those days I was dealing with tons of anxiety and fear, and I really wanted to know what is going on in that self of mine. You learn so much of Buddhism and you really don't know how to apply them into your life. And you know what to do, but sometimes it doesn't seem to work. The insight of it doesn't seem to come and really help you. So that was my experience. So I have been through also a degree at Harvard Divinity School. So I have been through academic pressure as a student. I realized, I can't be a full-time monk when my university degree called me to be a full-time student. So it was a challenge for me. And followed with that, I worked in hospitals as a chaplain, providing spiritual care. And I wrote my thesis on that experience. After that, I went to Michigan and lived with the Great Lakes Buddhist Vihara and the Sri Lankan community there. And then I moved to Canada, and also I have been going back and forth between Canada and US, teaching children, sharing experiences, and talking to them about various things that they like to talk about. So I have submitted my thesis, my doctoral thesis, to University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, and that part is done. So I want to begin let me see the time now. Yeah. I want to begin with, yeah, so Bante Sanathavihari put these slides on. This one girl within a Sri Lankan family, she called me through her mom and said, Bante, I'm about to finish my university degree. And the previous sem, she was an engineering student. For her previous semester was challenging enough, but this last semester, just the one that she had to finish, it didn't feel challenging enough to her, and this was a problem. And I sat with her on Zoom, and I let her speak. And what I discovered in that conversation, so there's a lot of learning from them in these conversations, what is actually going on in their lives. So her parents are well educated, so she was demanding so much from her that contributed to also seeing that her sister was doing excellent, and she had a little bit of pressure from that as well. So she wanted to be like that, to be like here we say, valedictorian and all the awards and everything. And I kind of had to listen to her until she found the answer that she was asking too much from her when she and you're about to graduate, and that you can do that, and your parents will be proud that you never gave up. So that's the message she took. And let me switch to another family, and this family lives in Canada. It took a while for her to understand what was actually going on with her. She was not focused, and especially during the pandemic, her parents were struggling, trying to find how to help this 13-year-old young Sri Lankan girl. Only recently we discovered that she had an eating disorder, although the assumptions of what she was dealing with were completely different from that. So what led to this eating disorder is virtually having to join a club within the school. She had to be in a certain body shape to be able to join this club. And that added pressure in her overall well-being. Until this was found, nobody knew how to help her, and nobody knew what was going on with her. So we were talking about various things. And I'm so glad finally a professional was able to discover this through conversations, and was able to reveal that to the family, because the professionals have certain limitations of how much they can reveal to the family. Stephanie can speak to this. But this much was shared, and parents really had a lot of relief knowing what was going on. And they joined her in that wanting, in that desire, as she started exploring if it was unrealistic desire that she built up within her own mind, if it is needed, and how that can shape up her own life. So as a monk, my role in there was to actually give an ear to this family as they were continuously coming back and talking to me time to time. And there are, there's also limitations of how, when they approach to us, these are very bright kids. They know, they know how to, they know how to find information. They know these things. But when they want to speak to a monk, they are very shy. They don't, this is why the Buddha had nuns in place. So these nuns and women were able to talk freely about what mattered to them, what were important to them. So this girl, with limited information, processed some of what she was dealing with. And it helped me to understand that all she needed was to focus on her own goals, and having these goals, and also understanding how realistic or unrealistic these were, mostly academic goals. So she was, in the beginning, she was failing, but eventually she was able to catch up and get back on track. But it's a slow process. So parents had to lower their expectations and join her in that journey as she was coming back to her normal self. And connected with eating disorder is this other Sri Lankan girl whose parents were vegetarian, and every time she had anything non-vegetarian from school, she was judged for that. So it was coming from parents, unfortunately. So she didn't have the freedom to eat what she wanted. And ultimately, she developed also a bigger eating disorder, and she started becoming, she was eating more than necessary. She couldn't be mindful about her eating. So this contributed her becoming overweight and also losing trust in her parents. So when she finally became, because the demand for her was, like Stephanie said, Sri Lankan parents put pressure on, all the children becoming doctors, engineers, and all that. So that was the pressure for her as well. But she didn't become a doctor. She became a social worker, which is not a thing that her parents understood. They thought she's a failure. So any income she made, she started ordering things on Amazon. Completely unnecessary stuff were ordered. And because of that, she couldn't save any money. And she got stuck living with her parents, with whom she didn't have a connection. And now, although she wants to move out, she can't do that because she doesn't have enough savings. So, so these are really major issues that our mind can create. Somewhere underneath, there's this child that needs to be heard. There's that, you can call it negative, but it's not, it's actually the reality. It's just nothing to do with negativity or positivity. It's just the inner experience of this person that is so valuable, and somebody has to pay attention to that. Somebody has to give that love, and surprisingly, that love should come from the people who are closest to them. Although it has added tremendous amount of suffering in her life, she's now forgiving herself for not understanding certain things. So she's doing forgiveness meditation, and also forgiving her parents and focusing on her other goals, such as trying to save enough so that she can put a down payment to a house and move out from that house and live a life free from any pressure. So that And I like to also go back to this teenager girl. She was only 13 years old, grew up in a family that adopted her within a Sri Lankan family. She was super smart. And at school, her, just before a maths test, she was introduced a certain drug by her friends in the bathroom. And they have it. And she said, no, I don't want to have it. I keep 5 precepts. I don't want to have it. But they said, have it. You will do your test better. So she had a little and she said, I don't feel anything. And they kept pushing her and she had more. And eventually when she went to the test, she was high. She got high and she threw up in that hall. And her favorite teacher, maths teacher, was there, and this girl started yelling at the teachers. The teacher freaked out, ran to the principal. It became a whole saga in the school. And then other students were questioned and they betrayed and lied to the principal, saying that it was this girl who brought this to the school. This can have a huge impact on her life ahead of her whole life. But this principal was wise, investigated the matter and found out what had actually happened and suspended the other 2 students for 2 weeks. And this is the other problem, that we can't completely put the one who misbehaves out from the discipline. The good behaving one is the one that doesn't need much discipline. It's those who are not behaving well that need schooling and discipline and rules, house rules. So in the case of this girl, she ultimately understood. She was very nice, as when she came to talk to me. She understood that she had to be strong in learning to say no to certain things and still stick to the Buddhist disciplines that she had learned, and also Christian disciplines that she had learned. So now she's thriving in her life, and there's more to this story that I think, it's because of the sensitivity of the matter, I would not share that much. But it is through them that I learned that hijacking can happen to anyone in that age, that our intelligence can get hijacked by substances. Our intelligence can get hijacked by emotions. And because of that, we lie. Because of that, we don't know that we are lying. We may lie to authorities. We may lie to parents. We may lie to boyfriends, girlfriends. Our intelligence can get hijacked by computer games, electronics, and our intelligence can get hijacked by hormones. Suddenly someone in the school becomes so beautiful to your eyes. The boy in the neighborhood that didn't matter to you until you are 13 or 14 is suddenly so beautiful, and you are finally giving more attention and building unrealistic ideas, sketching about how their nose looks like, how their eyes look like, what features you like of this person. This is normal. But when it affects, when you build an unrealistic mental world that isn't true, there's certain ignorance in it. Buddhism is all about, seeing that dark ignorance and knowing what is in there, instead of being in a denial, knowing the truth behind these emotions that we are feeling. So this one boy within the family has an attachment syndrome, attachment to computer gaming. And what it does is, it's like a cat going by a mirror and seeing his own reflection and jumping. There's, it doesn't know any difference. It thinks that this is a real cat. Just the same, in that same way, our brains, when we are given computer games so much, it becomes our reality. And someday you may want to act upon these activities that you do within a computer game, such as killing. So this young man started using a knife against his own mother. And this panicked, this created a lot of panic within the family. So I had to teach him how important it is to look after your own mother and how indebted you are to her for giving this life, and how you should instead look after her as best as you can, and stop being annoyed by her presence when she tells him to turn off the computer and focus on studies. This is where the clash started. And ultimately, this young man, he went through a lot of therapy reluctantly, but he started processing things and started catching up with his studies and barely finished his degree. But that is good enough. He did not land in any bad side of a newspaper. And in another community, a sudden death of a young man happened. And this affected all the children within the Sri Lankan community. So the parents started talking to me. And so when something like that happens, that fear that they started feeling zooms in and create an illusion that doesn't even exist, that this could happen to my child. This could, they try to apply Buddhist concepts also in a wrong way, that everything is impermanent, so we should feel depressed, and we should, always watch out, and we should not let our kid go out of the house and not let them drive. And so this is about parents doing what I can call, for lack of a better term, overprotection, over caring for the child out of love. So I think, as I had to address them one by one, and I was there with them in somewhat like an insecurity, and it certainly affected one family, and I call this triangulation. The girl is so much favored in that family, but much less the boy in the Sri Lankan family. So he felt very insecure within the family, and anything he did was not validated and the father. So he began struggling with it, and he doesn't trust anyone in the society because of this reason. He cannot, because he doesn't have trust built within his own family, and therefore he doesn't trust monks, he doesn't trust Dhamma school teachers, he doesn't trust anyone. So it's really hard to get a word out from him. And when he comes to talk to me and sit with me, I try to lead him in a guided meditation. He's dealing with a lot of restlessness, and he can't sit still for at least 1 minute. He has to move, and people able to label to this saying it's ADHD and anything, but somehow what this situation is that triangulation. And when we provide therapy to that young man, we should provide it to the whole family. You can't favor just one child and ignore the needs of the other child and keep giving gifts to the girl, not giving birthday surprises to the girl, not to the boy, and it can have an impact on their overall mental health for a long, long period of time. So we monks address these issues, and feel free to come talk to us, please. Okay, this other girl, she went to Sri Lanka and she was attached to her grandmother. And when she came back to North Americas, she wanted to always be with her grandmother. She started crying a lot. And she's super talented. She can give speeches in front of school friends, and she can be creative with arts and writing. So she had all these talents and she was doing so well in her studies, but something triggered in her when she came back from Sri Lanka, and she started worrying that maybe my grandma would die. Maybe I should go and live in Sri Lanka with her and help her. We never know where these attachments can develop in our minds, but these are innocent children, loving their grandparents little extra, and we can take them back to Sri Lanka and say, okay, you can live with your grandma and study there, but the parents also want the child to study in here, and try to go through the education system here. I often hear parents saying, I walked 5 miles and I crossed 7 bridges to get to the school. Look, there's no problem for you. The school bus comes to you. All you have to do is, just get in to the bus and sit and, have fun. My school days wasn't like that. And of course, the parents can start that, and children have memorized all the words of it. They can finish and say what they're going to say next. But in this family, there was a lot of understanding. And I love the parents for that. A lot of understanding and saying, see, you are so talented in so many areas, and let's, send a drawing to the grandma. And so she feels connected to you that way. Let's send something, in mail. So she and let's bring her here so you can be with her. And that, I think, created a healthy, holistic environment within the family. So she feels connected. And also the parents did a wonderful thing, came to a back to school program and connected with me on WhatsApp, and we are communicating back and forth. And so that's a healthy story there, and she's doing okay so far. Yeah, so I think I may have covered pretty much all the things on the slides here. Maybe I have spoken enough right now. We can open it up for questions and see what comes up.
Thank you, Bante. That was wonderful. Very, very, very powerful information. And so, yeah, now we want to, hear what everybody else has to say, and, make time for some questions. So anybody want to start off?
Yeah, so if you have any questions or any comments, now is the time. I believe you can unmute yourself. And, for the benefit of all, please ask a question, because most likely people have the same question that you have. Some people are just a little too shy. So if you feel a little bit braver than others, then you can help them. And also for the benefit of the people that are going to be watching this later, right? We don't know, maybe hundreds or thousands of people could watch this later. And you can help someone else, right? They might be too scared, or they don't have an opportunity to ask this question because they weren't able to come here today. But you can do a great service for them by bringing up a question and helping those people in the future.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to maybe type in the chat, feel free as well. We can always read the questions.
Bante, let me also add a little bit insight into anxiety. I think something that we all may talk about. Children our young children, all of us, like Stephanie and Bante have shown in the slides also, that we all feel it. It's not just you feeling it. And the positive side of it, say you have to make a presentation in front of a large audience and you feel stressed about it. The mind works like a muscle, and it has pains and past memories and stuff. And it's very quick, and you start feeling the anxiety of it. But the positive side is that you feel it because you want to do better, and see that you want to do better, and what you can do is to prepare and see that has it ever happened? Has the negative thing that you are imagining would happen has happened? Is it true, or is it necessary? Ask these questions from you. And I'll tell you the story of this kid who went to see a dentist. The day before, he was fighting with his mom, or not wanting to go. And the following day, somehow, when he went, he found out that the dentist appointment has been cancelled. So what is the use of all that worrying the day before? Think about these stories and apply this wisdom to just basically any experience, exams, or anything you have. What's the best use of your time? Best use of your time is to prepare, not to procrastinate things. And prepare what you say first, what you say in the middle, where to include a joke, where to include a meaningful story, how to conclude, how to manage your time. These are skills that everyone needs to develop, because we are fast evolving. We are social beings. We will be thrown into work environments very soon, where we'll have to express our ideas and see that everything you want to achieve is on the other side of what you label as fear. If you ran away from it, you will not get that opportunity. And sometimes anxiety and fear and depression, they are all interconnected. Think that we live in our minds, not in our house. This mind is an unlimited area. We need to unplug, take a break, enjoy the nature, get good sleep, eat healthy food, start moving, running and seeing the sunlight and getting vitamins from the nature and drinking enough water. All these can build a healthy body and healthy chemistry within your brain. And sometimes, we only learn this, when we are very down with our health. But, why not give attention to vitamin intake, drinking enough water, getting good sleep, having good friends, wise friends, and choosing wisely when you are choosing friends, so you know who to share with certain things and who to be close with, and how to be contained, how to contain your ideas, how to be excited with them, not overshare, lots of things. But finally, the most meaningful thing that you may want to remember is that you have this intelligence, and when the whole world is against you, your own intelligence should serve you and help you. And the Buddha, where the Buddha says, what would the Buddha do? WWBD, like a little wristband. What would the Buddha do in a situation like this? He would relax, smile, let go. It's not the idea of letting go, it's just actual letting go. Unplug, be in seclusion and let that anxiety come and go, knowing that this too shall pass. It's not a feeling that you need to identify with forever. Sometimes you are in college already and your parents have already done the job of sending you to college. It is now your responsibility to feel like an adult and craft your life, not get into wrong streams of indulgence, so that you are not going to make it through the program. So these are things that may help with that anxiety and insecurity and uncertainty and whatever that you may be feeling at the in your life. So Venerable Swarna has his hand up.
Thank you, Venerable Kusala and Sanathavihari and Stephanie for the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed, and it's really enlightened me, how especially Southeast Asian, diasporas in America and North America and handling these mental health issues. They really inspired me and enlightened me, and I look able to look out from a different perspective than I had earlier. So I'm very grateful to all of you presentators, and also how how Buddhism and the Western psychology work together, to deal with this all mental health issues, especially our, the childhood traumas, the wounds, how they're still, creating problems. And another interesting, what I was very stunned with the inner child, babies, everyone. And this spiritual bypass doesn't work, people become so spiritual immediately, and it doesn't work. Need process, counting other, a gradual process to heal those wounds. It doesn't happen healed within a night. And it's really inspired me, and especially that, and with the urge for, even I myself suffered a lot from anxiety, perfection. Also, a bunch of best, students was competing for each other. And when I came here at Harvard, it's full of like a pressure cooker. Everyone is, putting a lot of pressure on each other. It's full of, I feel like an intellectual trauma. But I also went through the thing, as he said, and the way I deal is the same thing as Pante said, the forgiveness, not ask for a lot of perfection, especially mindfulness helped me a lot. At the same time, a lot of counseling too, but, the gradual, way of, dealing with emotions helped me a lot. And thank you very much, all of you, for, for this wonderful talk. And I would like to share, how this mindful, because nowadays the mindfulness is a big job, is business in Western countries, and how it's bombarding. And sometimes it's negative too. They're using mindfulness for sometimes for to make a better businessman or better suitor. like a Micha Sati, not a Sama Sati. Bante, you all, aware, how we have to guide them to do, better, mindfulness for mental health and social well-being. Yeah. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you. That was lovely. Thank you so much. And that was a great point. I think it all comes down to, that the acceptance, like you mentioned, right? Being able to feel like we can accept those parts of ourselves that are flawed. We all have them, right? To them is that delusion, that the denial that keeps all of that actually going longer. So and we continue to then experience it. So us being able to lean into that radical acceptance, it creates more of that healing for us, being able to move through it and, know that we all have feelings, emotions, it's normal. and to normalize that within our community, right? Like it's okay for us to have emotions and feelings and to struggle. Maybe we need to talk about that more, right? Like, why are we only just talking about people's, successes and achievements only, we can maybe talk about, how we can help others and how we can, and normalize it a bit more, right? And not create more shame and putting others down as well. That's something I think is really important to think about within our community, not putting others down and, talking about these struggles that individuals have is sometimes even a way to make ourselves feel better, or to, spread things that are, going to end up being harmful to this as a whole. So yeah, any questions? Any other questions? If there's any others, please also do, as I mentioned, type in the chat as well. And I also wanted to just put a question out there. If anyone has any ideas about some other things that we can do to help the community. Oh, I see a question. And so we'd love to hear. And yes, you can, Jenny, you can go ahead. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, thank you all for your presentation. I think your work is greatly needed in the Asian community. Stephanie, this question is for you. My apologies. Experiences. One of them was like dealing with a balance of like cultures. And then right afterwards, you had mentioned another term. When you were talking about that, I was just like, wow, there's actually a term for it. And it's really nice to know and be aware of it, just because I think that it's such a common experience. And for myself, it is nice to have a word for something like that, to make it easier to not only talk about it, but also to be mindful of it for myself. I've learned that a lot of the issues that I had growing up was balancing the two cultures, being Cambodian and being born and raised in America. It's been a challenge because it's two different value systems. And before I was kind of like, which one is better? Better communicate with more walks of life. So not just within the Cambodian community, or not just as an American, but just like a human experience too, especially as many people in the world are traveling and interacting with different people now from all types of backgrounds. But yeah, Stephanie, can you go over those two terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So with enculturation, that term was, us being able to gain more of that, stuff that we learned from birth, the exposure to, the cultural values. So, the norms, the beliefs, the behaviors, things that like, like we just do, like kind of like the examples I mentioned before, like with, for example, like this is how we pray, speak, stuff like that, so just that whole process of us learning, those types of things, within our culture. And then, an example of that could be like, another one could be, I have this one that I had before, a young girl, maybe, from raised in a certain faith, then goes to, then getting that exposure essentially to that community, and stuff like that. And acculturation, so with an A, is the process of like the cultural exchange. So kind of like what you mentioned before, where there is that like exposure to like another culture, and through this sustained contact of us being within that culture, it creates this you know uh, things that we might need to change about ourselves might come up, right? And noticing the differences that we might have versus another culture. And an example of that could also be maybe someone moves from a different country to the US, for example, then learns English in order to then communicate with her neighbors or something. So that would be like an example of that, just that need to adapt, and as well as it just kind of naturally kind of coming exposed to different cultures. So yeah, did I answer that question for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and thank you for sharing your experience. That's really powerful, and I thank you for yeah, like really connecting that concept with your own life, because it's really a real thing, right? We start to have that conflict, and I wanted to share too that, like, sometimes when we're in different environments in our lives, right, whether it's like school or work or whatever the environment, we might notice that we are different, right? And it might bring that up within us, that almost that feeling of the disconnect. And I can say that like a lot of some of my friends, even within the community, have shared things like, going to college and going away for college, and how that can be really tough at times, seeing how others live their lives. And when you finally do have that chance to learn about other cultures and communities, right, it can kind of bring up this further questioning of our own identities, and reflecting on how we were raised. Like, do we like this way of living? Like questions like that. It might even bring up a sense of like a crisis, like within us, right? Like a existential crisis. Like, am I, what has my life been all along? How do I want to live my life? And that's why, we want to create this sense of openness within our community to talk about these things that, again, are not related to just, anxiety, depression, it's typical mental illnesses that we think about, but just being able to talk about these normal struggles that we might face, like just I don't know who I am. It can be just that, right? That's a big question, right? But that's something that, to be honest with you, I have a lot of my patients come to me asking, that question all the time, and I want to be able to normalize that within our community, that it's not, it feels really scary, of course, but we have the safety net here to talk about these things, and there are also resources that we can also discuss as well if there's need for like a higher level of support. So yeah, but thank you, Jenny. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for today?
Well, it looks like we're coming towards the top of the hour now, and I think this would be a good place to talk about like future events, or like share our resources and contacts. So I'm just gonna throw up the PowerPoint again, because we have it all there.
Yeah, so we were thinking about an upcoming event, which we will actually be, if those of you who have Facebook, are actively using Facebook, we will be posting some, and please contact. We have our contacts listed too at the end of the slide, so you can feel free to reach us by email, or whatever other way of communication. If you have questions, and we basically were thinking of doing like a seasonal hike, something where we can just kind of have fun and come together and just talk about just anything really, and just to start to create that community spirit and support. And so we were thinking to do one sometime this fall. This weekend actually is the start of the fall season. So you know, perfect timing, I guess. So we were thinking maybe around October. So all the details will be posted up very soon. We actually plan to create an actual page for this. So that way, you know, everything will be there. There's no confusion. We don't have to worry about posts getting lost in the black hole of Facebook or anything like that. So we want to make sure that these resources are easily accessible, you know, especially if someone is really needing them. And, you know, we can always share them with people that we know that need help, right? You know, friends, family, whoever. So yeah, we were thinking of that hiking upcoming event. So please look out for that. And we'll have a page set up for that. So that will be coming up soon. And also, I wanted to share that just like a long-term thing that I wanted to personally share in terms of my life coaching services. You know, if anyone does want support, you know, with talking about just like things like self-esteem, you know, like, you know, identity, just wanting to, I don't know, just anything really, wanting to work on myself and be better at self-care, exercise, you know, sleeping better, like anything, you know, it can be whatever. Please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about anything. You know, any age range, I'm comfortable with anybody. So please, you know, don't be shy. I'm here to support and help. And or if you have any questions too about any other resources that you can support with. So yeah, thank you. And here is another list of other resources. So you know, as we all mentioned before in our presentation, you know, sometimes there's different types of support we might need at different times. So sometimes we have the need for family support, groups, as Bante Kusala mentioned, you know, sometimes, you know, not sometimes, having that family involvement is really key, you know, that is a protect the group, the community, you know, the environment, whatever it might be. And that includes family. So, you know, some of these resources actually do have family support, and the other ones as well, SAMHSA. You know, just like there's a lot of these like hotlines as well. So if like you're needing immediate support, hotlines here that you can use to call if you need any help. And also at the bottom, there's that mental health and wellness app called Headspace. It's a good one as well. So yeah, these are a lot of resources here, but if there's any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And here are contacts. So yeah, if you would like to, anybody who has any questions after the presentation is like, oh darn, I didn't get to ask that one question, feel free to please reach out to us. And we have our emails and numbers listed here. So yeah, that's all for today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Also, I'm gonna, when I upload the video, I'm gonna be adding these resources and the details, you know, in the details of the video, and also our contact info and the details of the video once it gets posted, and it'll be shared on our social media. So you'll also be able to go back and watch it. And also our emails are there, and specifically mine. If you want a copy of this, I can send you a copy of this presentation and you can have it and keep it for yourself. Also, yeah, I'd also like to make myself available. You know, if anyone needs just an ear to listen, I have 2 ears. You know, so I have more than enough. You can send me an email and we can talk via WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook or just old school phone call, whatever you like. You know, we can do that also. And yeah, as Stephanie said, we're thinking about some plans like a hike, and that's just going to be mostly for people in Southern California, but we got plans to do activities online too, you know, so stay posted for that. We're planning to do like groups or other activities that we can do online. And then, you know, depending on where I find myself or like Bante Kusala, wherever he's at, maybe we could do some kind of like different activities in different locations throughout the Americas, right? Depending where we're at, or all over the world, because we're kind of an international group. So kind of, yeah, just kind of kind of stay tuned for that. And as Stephanie said, we're going to have a page dedicated to this, which will do. I'm gonna directly link to this video and where this video will be posted. Bante, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we finish it up today?
Same thing, Bante. I have 2 years, and we all have this kind heart and non-judgmental presence whenever you want to approach us. Stephanie has courageously also posted her phone number. So that's really direct line, and our emails are up there, and we will be available. That really, we are here, and this is the goal of all of us, that we want to reach out to you and hear you out so we can really help.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We wanted to say thank you again for, you know, taking the time out of your weekend to be here and to listen to. Support is so important to us, healing and growing and, you know, raising our awareness, you know, and this is all good for, it's all beneficial for all of back, you know, it's not right, and so a lot of this is it's all connected, you know, and I think the whole thing about this, as a last note, just to mention and to as a reminder, you know, we all are connected, we all are one, you know, we all live under the same, we're on the same planet, you know, and so really just we want to continue to just break these barriers, and so we can, you know, move past our ego and our, you know, our fears, our identity, the things that hold us back, you know, and really move towards opening our hearts, healing, and, you know, just reminding ourselves that we're all human beings at the end of the day, you know, titles aside, you know, I even tell this to patients in therapy, you know, forget I'm the therapist, I'm just a person. So just wanted to remind you all, thank you for that, and I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend.